If Lucia hadn't spoken up that night, Falcon Tech would have signed away its future. She was never supposed to be in that room. She was never supposed to read that contract. And no one was ever supposed to listen to her. But that night, everything changed. Lucia Ramos hadn't meant to stay late. Again. It was 7:30, and the cleaning crews were already rolling their carts down the carpeted halls of Falcon Tech Tower. The overhead lights had dimmed into energy-saving mode, casting long shadows across the gleaming floor. Outside, the last light of day melted behind the San Francisco skyline, and in the lowest rank of the 50th floor, tucked in a narrow hallway marked Records Division, Lucia stood alone beside the copy machine, waiting on one final scan. Her badge read, Temporary Clerk Level 2, laminated with a barcode that didn't even grant her access to the bathroom on the executive floor. Her job was to scan, file, and disappear. At least, that's what people expected. Every day, she heard the same dismissive voices. Just leave it on the corner of the desk, sweetie. Try not to mix them up this time. Oh, you're still here. I thought your shift ended hours ago. They never remembered her name. Some people didn't even look at her. Others waved her off with a flick of their fingers, like she was a fly buzzing in their perfect, glass-walled world. Once, a junior executive handed her his coffee order like she worked for catering. When she corrected him, he didn't even apologize. Just laughed and said, all you temps look the same. Lucia laughed too, but only when she turned away. Inside, it burned. A small fire that never went out. She felt it when the HR manager told her, without blinking, that there were no full-time positions available, even though the person who left last week hadn't been replaced. She felt it when the IT guy took 3 days to fix her computer while responding instantly to the finance team across the hall. She felt it when she walked into a meeting by accident and the entire room went quiet like she had tracked in mud. Even the janitor, Mr. Halverson, called her the quiet one. Like that was her only identity. Lucia tucked a loose curl behind her ear, her eyes red from too many hours squinting at fine print. Her fingers smelled faintly of ink and coffee. On her desk were 2 sandwiches she hadn't eaten and a to-do list she hadn't made a dent in. It didn't matter. No one would notice if she finished or not. No one ever did. Lucia was used to being unseen. Born in a small California town to a construction worker and a housekeeper, she had learned early how the world treated people like her. Her high school counselor said she was too ambitious when she applied to Ivy League schools. The HR lady at her first job said her accent was strong, though Lucia spoke 2 languages fluently. And in the corporate world of Falcon Tech, where suits cost more than her monthly rent, she was invisible until someone needed a file. She remembered every sideways glance. Every time someone asked, "Where are you really from?" Every smile that didn't reach the eyes. Every compliment that wasn't a compliment at all. You're surprisingly articulate. You don't act like the others. You're probably great with cleaning too, right? Lucia had once smiled like that. That was before she dropped out of law school to take care of her mother, before the rent doubled, before she realized the world didn't make room for people like her unless they forced it. She glanced at the stack of documents in her arms. Contracts, mergers, and terms of service so complex they could have been written in code. She didn't just scan them. She read them. Quietly. Carefully. Like maps no one else bothered to follow. Tonight was supposed to be just another unnoticed evening. But when she walked to the 54th floor to drop off a file to legal, the elevator dinged on the wrong level. She stepped out instinctively, her mind too tired to notice the error, and followed the hallway to a door slightly ajar. She paused. Inside was a long conference room, empty except for a single folder on the table. The lights were still on. Someone had been here. Or would be. She should have turned back. But something made her step inside. Maybe it was the folder. Maybe it was the silence. She crossed the room and read the top line, Falcon Tech Strategic Partnership Agreement, Final Draft. Her eyes skimmed the opening lines, then stopped. There it was. A clause buried in paragraph 17b. Something small, easily missed. But not to her. Her throat tightened. The clause granted the partner company extended rights to Falcon Tech as proprietary software in perpetuity if a separate clause, outlined on page 42, was not renegotiated within 18 months. But the renegotiation clause had been removed. Permanently. It was a trap. Lucia blinked, rereading to be sure. Then the door opened. Daniel Vale, CEO of Falcon Tech, stepped inside. Tall, clean-cut, late 40s. He stopped mid-stride when he saw her. "Who are you?" Lucia straightened instinctively. "Lucia Ramos, Records Division. I was delivering a file to legal and got off on the wrong floor. He approached slowly, eyes on the folder in her hand. "You read that?" She hesitated. "I did. I noticed something in the contract. I know I shouldn't be in here, but, that clause on page 17, it's dangerous. It gives them unlimited rights to your software without any oversight. You could lose everything." There was silence. Daniel looked at her, not with annoyance, but interest. He stepped closer. "Show me." She flipped to the clause and explained. Her voice shook, but her mind was steady. Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he took the folder and read it himself. Then he nodded, slowly. "You just saved us $100 million. Lucia blinked. "Sir." He extended his hand. "Come with me." She hesitated. "I'm just a temp." "Not anymore." And with that, he led her down the hallway, toward the elevators. The ride up was silent. At the top floor, Daniel waved off his assistant, opened a door, and motioned her inside. A spacious office. A view of the bay. He turned to her. "Tell me your story." Lucia stood there, heart pounding. This wasn't supposed to happen. People like her didn't end up here. Not in the corner office. Not under the lights. Not with the CEO of the company thanking her. But maybe that was the point. Maybe that's exactly why she had to speak. "I studied law," she said quietly. "Dropped out to care for my mom when she got sick. Took this job to pay rent. I read every document they gave me because I didn't want to forget what I was capable of. Even when everyone else did." Daniel nodded slowly. And something in Lucia shifted. Not because she had been seen. But because, finally, someone had listened. Lucia didn't sleep that night. Her apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old radiator. But her thoughts were loud. They echoed with every word the CEO had said to her, every look he'd given her that wasn't pity, suspicion, or dismissal. That alone made it hard to rest. She kept replaying the moment in her head, the pause when he read the clause, the nod, the words, "You just saved us $100 million. Her body was tired, her eyes dry, but something inside her was wired. Because for the first time in years, someone had seen her not as a mistake in the hallway or a temp with a badge number, but as someone who mattered. The next morning, she walked into Falcon Tech not through the back entrance by the delivery trucks, but through the front doors. People noticed. She felt the glances. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. Most didn't hide their confusion. Is she lost? Did she get promoted or something? Why is she up here? Lucia felt every word. They didn't need to be said aloud. She could read them in the way people leaned away when she passed, or in the tight smiles that vanished the second she looked away. She had dressed carefully, a dark blouse, clean slacks, shoes that didn't click too loud on the tile. Her hair was pulled back. She looked confident, but inside, her stomach turned. It didn't matter that she had saved the company millions. It didn't matter that the CEO had personally invited her to sit in on the executive review meeting that morning. In the eyes of the others, she was still that girl from the file room. A name no one learned. A face they never looked at twice. Lucia tried not to let it show. But she remembered the last time someone had laughed behind her back as she walked by. It had been 2 months ago, when she'd spilled coffee in the hallway. A VP muttered, "Figures," while his assistant chuckled. No one helped her clean it up. And now? Now she was in the elevator with those same people. They didn't say anything. But their eyes spoke. She won't last. Probably a token. Must have caught someone's attention the wrong way. Lucia looked straight ahead. Daniel Vale met her outside the boardroom. He smiled warmly. "Glad you came." She nodded. "Thank you for inviting me." He opened the door and let her in. The room was already filled. Suits, laptops, coffee cups on coasters. When she entered, conversation paused for a beat. Just a beat. But it was long enough. A senior manager at the far end of the table looked her up and down. "Did we bring someone from admin to take minutes?" Daniel turned his head. "Lucia Ramos. She'll be reviewing contract oversight recommendations today." Silence. Lucia felt her throat tighten but held her ground. She walked to her seat and placed her notes down carefully. The meeting began. The first 20 minutes were routine. Slide decks, budget forecasts, digital initiatives. Lucia stayed quiet, though her mind worked overtime. She caught inconsistencies in what one executive said about quarterly projections. She noticed how another manager cited a regulation that had expired last year. No one else caught it. Then it was her turn. Daniel introduced her formally, but some of the executives were already looking at their phones. One didn't even try to hide a sigh. She took a breath. "I reviewed the contract revisions from the Vertex partnership. There are 3 clauses that open us to long-term liability. The most concerning is in Section 6B. It overrides our standard IP protections." Now they were listening. A man near the front, Johnson, legal, narrowed his eyes. "That language was signed off by our outside counsel." Lucia didn't flinch. "It still contradicts Falconteca's internal compliance charter. Page 14, Section 3.4. I cross-referenced." Johnson opened his laptop. Started typing. Another woman leaned forward. "She's right. It does contradict. We missed that." Daniel glanced at Lucia and gave her a small nod. But it didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. Because after the meeting, when people filtered out and started whispering, she heard it again. Sharp, but she came out of nowhere. "It's risky to rely on someone without credentials. I bet this is a one-time thing." Lucia returned to her desk, now a shared office closer to the executive wing, and sat down slowly. She wanted to feel proud. Instead, she felt heavy. Every success came with suspicion. Every step forward, a whisper behind her back. She pulled out her notebook and began to write. Not just to plan the next set of documents to review, but to ground herself. To remind herself why she was doing this. She remembered her mother's voice: "Work hard. Be better than they expect. Don't let their silence make you feel small." Lucia had done that. But still, they questioned. Not her work. Her right to be there. And that was what hurt most of all. Lucia didn't see it coming. One minute she was reviewing compliance language in a contract draft. The next, she was being asked to step into HR. "Just a quick meeting," the email said. Her stomach dropped. There was never such a thing as a quick meeting in HR. Inside, the room was cold, plain. No one offered coffee. No one smiled. Across the table sat two people she barely knew, one from human resources, the other from legal. "This is a routine review," said the woman in the gray suit. "About the chain of authorization regarding sensitive materials." Lucia blinked. "What materials?" "Documents from the Vertex partnership proposal." Lucia felt her heart pound. "I was asked to review that contract by Mr. Vale." The man in legal didn't blink. "Do you have that request in writing?" There it was. The trap. Lucia opened her mouth, then closed it. She hadn't asked for an email. He'd told her in person. She thought she was finally being trusted. The HR rep leaned forward, her voice neutral. "Your access level doesn't officially authorize you to handle executive-level contracts without proper clearance." Lucia sat very still. "Are you saying I broke protocol by doing the job I was asked to do?" "We're saying the process wasn't followed." The words echoed. Not wrong. Just out of line. Too bold. Too fast. Too much. They didn't threaten her job directly. They didn't need to. "We'll document this as a procedural error," the HR woman said, already closing the folder. "Just be sure in the future to go through the proper channels." Lucia left that office with her ears ringing. She rode the elevator down in silence. At her desk, a sticky note had been left by someone on her keyboard. "Careful. You're making waves." No signature. She sat down slowly. Her eyes burned. Later that day, Daniel stopped by her desk. He looked tired. "I heard about HR. I'm sorry. I should have been more explicit. This one's on me." Lucia nodded, unsure what to say. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But she knew how the system worked. How quick it was to discipline the ones at the bottom. How forgiving it was to the ones at the top. It reminded her of her mother's fight for disability support years ago. The endless paperwork. The lost forms. The hours on hold. All because a single clerk marked the wrong box. Back then, no one apologized. Now, at Falcon Tech, it was happening again. Quiet punishment. No warning. Just a meeting, a memo, and a threat wrapped in protocol. The next day, her ID badge stopped working on the 54th floor. "Temporary glitch," said IT. It took 3 days to fix. In those 3 days, she was shut out of meetings. Ignored on email threads. One executive even forwarded her analysis to someone else for verification. Lucia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The company that had once leaned on her insight now acted like she was a liability. She started eating lunch alone again. People who used to smile gave her polite nods and walked faster. When she passed the copy room, she heard someone whisper, "She's the one who went over legal's head." Lucia wanted to scream. She wanted to shout, "I was trying to protect this place." But she stayed quiet. She always had. Until now. One evening, she stayed late. Not because of deadlines, but because she couldn't face another silent train ride home. The janitor, Mr. Halverson, passed by and gave her a look. "Still here? You people never quit." She froze. "You people." He kept walking. Lucia stared at the computer screen, vision blurring. All her life, she had heard those words. From teachers. From landlords. From cops who questioned her brothers without cause. From doctors who assumed she didn't understand. You people. Not individuals. Not professionals. Not neighbors. Just a group. An assumption. She went home that night and cried. Not because of one comment. But because of what it meant. That no matter how hard she worked, how clean her record, how sharp her mind, there would always be someone waiting to remind her of her place. That weekend, while walking through her neighborhood, she ran into Mrs. Delgado, her old high school teacher. "Lucia, Mija. I saw your name in the paper. The tech company. You're doing big things, huh?" Lucia smiled weakly. "Trying." Mrs. Delgado's face changed. "You look tired. Don't let them wear you down. Remember when you helped translate that school grant letter? You were 16, and they wouldn't even let your mom into the meeting without a certified interpreter. You spoke better English than half the staff." Lucia chuckled. It hurt, but it felt good too. "Yeah, I remember. Don't let them make you forget who you are," Mrs. Delgado said. "You weren't hired to fit in. You were sent to change something." It hit harder than expected. That night, Lucia pulled out her notebook and wrote something new at the top. "They fear what they can't control. But I know why I'm here." The next morning, she was called to the COO's office. She didn't know what to expect. The chief operating officer was a man named Harris. Clean desk. Cold smile. "Have a seat, Ms. Ramos." She sat. "We've reviewed your involvement in the Vertex matter. You were correct. The oversight you pointed out likely saved the company from a breach." She nodded slowly. "That said, your involvement in that contract was not authorized through the typical hierarchy." Lucia met his gaze. "Do you mean I didn't ask permission to stop $100 million mistake?" He paused. "I mean we have procedures." Lucia leaned forward. Her voice didn't shake. "And if those procedures let bad contracts through? If they overlook loopholes? Should I have kept quiet? You should have asked." There it was again. The real message: know your place. She left the office feeling more alone than ever. That night, Lucia walked past a newsstand. A local paper had a feature on corporate accountability. Falcon Tech was mentioned. Not by name, but by implication. It stung. She had tried to do good. But the system wasn't built for truth. It was built for quiet. She stared at the city lights and wondered if it was all worth it. Then she remembered her mother's words. "The world won't give you a seat. You have to bring your own." And Lucia knew. She wasn't done. The elevator doors opened without the usual ding. Lucia stepped into the executive suite with her heart braced like armor. That morning had started with an email from Daniel Vale. Simple. Direct. "Join me in the boardroom at 9. No subject line. No explanation. She hadn't seen or heard much from him since the COO meeting. Part of her wondered if he was distancing himself. Another part hoped he hadn't given up. She'd kept her head down, working quietly, almost invisibly again, while navigating the tension of being both praised and punished for doing the right thing. The hall outside the boardroom was unusually quiet. Her footsteps barely echoed on the marble floor. As she reached for the door, it opened before she could knock. Daniel stood there, his expression unreadable. Behind him were 5 other people, all unfamiliar. One was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a folder in her lap. Another wore a badge clipped to a blazer bearing a government seal. "Come in, Lucia. Please, have a seat." She sat at the end of the table. No one smiled. Their stillness felt clinical, almost cold. Daniel cleared his throat. "These are external auditors. Government consultants. They're conducting a quiet investigation into the recent corporate contract discrepancies." Lucia felt her chest tighten. "They want to talk about the Vertex file," Daniel said. "And the person who flagged it." One of the consultants, the woman with the sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Did you understand what that clause meant when you read it, Ms. Ramos?" "Yes." "And who authorized you to review it?" Lucia hesitated. "Mr. Vale did. Verbally." The man with the government badge nodded slightly. "That explains the irregularity in the access logs. We assumed a breach. Lucia met his gaze. It wasn't. It was observation. I noticed a loophole. I spoke up. The room was quiet for a long moment. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her seat. Then the woman opened the folder. Inside was a printed news article. Do you recognize this? Lucia glanced at the page. Her own name, half buried in a paragraph about the company's recent near-miss. An anonymous source had been quoted. A junior clerk raised concerns about the deal. She nodded. Yes. The woman looked up. The source was us. We leaked it to test the company's internal response. Lucia blinked. Why? Because whistleblowers are often punished, the man said. And we needed to know how Falcon Tech would handle someone doing the right thing. It hit her like a punch to the chest. Everything, the meeting with HR, the badge deactivation, the silence, had been noticed. They had seen it all. Daniel leaned forward. Lucia, they didn't come here to question you. They came to thank you. The woman nodded. You exposed a vulnerability. And you did it under pressure. That's not just integrity. That's leadership. Lucia's voice barely worked. I almost lost my job. The man replied, yes. And that says more about the system than it does about you. She looked down, overwhelmed. For so long, she had fought to be heard. Now, the people who made the rules were finally listening. We want to help you build something, Daniel said. A new oversight program. Internal ethics review. You'd lead it. With your name on the door. Lucia stared at him. You want me to run it? You already have. Her thoughts flooded with memories. Sitting in cold waiting rooms with her mother. Filing paperwork for benefits that were denied 3 times before someone read the signature correctly. Being questioned at age 10 for translating at the DMV. Told she was too loud in school. Then told she was too quiet. This wasn't just about the job. This was about every time she had been asked to prove she belonged. Every form she'd filled out twice because someone lost the first one. Every time she'd been ignored, or corrected, or gently redirected towards something smaller. And now, she was being offered leadership. Not because someone wanted to be generous. But because she had earned it. Fought for it. Demanded it. The meeting ended with handshakes, signatures, and real acknowledgement. Not applause. But something better. As she walked out of the boardroom, she saw the COO waiting down the hall. His face was tight, unreadable. She nodded as she passed. This time, she didn't shrink. By noon, the email went out company-wide. Announcing Lucia Ramos as Director of Internal Ethics and Compliance. Some cheered. Some whispered. A few rolled their eyes. But no one could deny it anymore. She belonged. And yet, as Lucia sat in her new office that evening, overlooking the city from a floor she'd once been locked out of, she felt something shift in the air. A message popped up on her new corporate laptop. Anonymous. Congrats. Let's see how long it lasts. She stared at the words. Because not everyone was ready for the changes she was about to bring. And the resistance was just beginning. Lucia didn't celebrate. She didn't post the news. She didn't buy new clothes. She didn't even tell her mother right away. She just went to work. Because she knew the title wasn't protection. It was a spotlight. And not everyone liked what it lit up. In the first week as Director of Internal Ethics and Compliance, Lucia uncovered 5 misfiled contracts, 2 outdated policy documents still in circulation, and 1 executive who had never completed his mandatory ethics training, for 4 years straight. She brought it up in a meeting. The room went silent. The executive's jaw tightened. He muttered something about priorities. After the meeting, her office door was left ajar. She heard the whispers in the hallway. She's on a power trip. Trying to prove something. Who gave her that office anyway? Lucia heard them all. And each word landed like a splinter. Because it didn't matter that she was right. It didn't matter that she had saved the company from disaster. She was still, to them, someone who didn't belong in a place of power. Not really. She thought of her uncle, who was fired from a factory job after pointing out a safety hazard. They called it downsizing. She thought of her cousin, a nurse, who was suspended after refusing to clock out before finishing patient rounds. They called it policy violation. The stories weren't new. They were just dressed in suits now. And Lucia refused to be quiet. So she kept going. She created a new oversight checklist. Required departments to sign off on updated standards. Started holding monthly forums where anyone could raise concerns anonymously. Attendance was low at first. But one day, a custodian emailed her a picture of a supply closet filled with expired chemicals. She responded immediately. 2 days later, a marketing intern flagged a data collection script that was borderline unethical. Lucia added a policy line that changed how user data was handled. Then the whispers changed tone. She's relentless. She actually listens. She fixed something no one else bothered to. But not everyone was convinced. At a quarterly meeting, a senior manager dismissed her report publicly. These aren't real risks. Just compliance noise. Lucia stood her ground. Tell that to the customer who signed that contract. Or the vendor who walked away. Later that week, she received another anonymous message. Stay in your lane. This time, she forwarded it to the internal security team. No more silence. And yet, the resentment lingered. In boardroom glances. In awkward pauses when she entered the elevator. In the way her opinions were repeated later by someone else, but praised that time. She was tired. So tired. But she never forgot who she was fighting for. The invisible ones. The employees who didn't have offices. The ones who mailed in complaints and never heard back. The ones who cleaned up after others and got no credit. One afternoon, she received a handwritten letter. It was from an older woman in payroll. I just wanted to say thank you. I've worked here 22 years. No one ever asked me if a policy made my job harder. You did. That meant something. Lucia held that letter for a long time. Because that was why she did it. Not for the ones who watched. But for the ones who had been watching, waiting, and hoping someone would care. At year's end, the company announced a new division-wide ethics initiative. It was Lucia's program, expanded. She was asked to speak. The same room that had once gone silent at her presence was now full. Not all were allies. But all were listening. She stepped to the microphone. When I started, I was told to stay in my lane. But the problem is, when the lane is broken, someone has to step out and fix it. Not for applause. But because people deserve better. Silence followed. Then a long, slow clap from someone in the back. It built. Not loud. But steady. After the talk, a woman in a maintenance uniform approached. My daughter wants to be like you. She saw your name in the newsletter. She asked me if someone like us could ever work up there. Lucia's voice caught. Tell her yes. And tell her she already has someone up here fighting for her. Lucia placed the letter from payroll in her desk drawer next to her badge from the file room. She kept both. Because reminders matter. And in a world that often overlooks the quiet protectors, maybe your story, the one you live when no one is watching, is the one that changes everything. If this story moved you, share it. Let someone else know they're not alone. Because sometimes, the person who sees the trap in the fine print is the one who saves the future.